is a native of Tupelo, a graduate of THS and also of MSCW, nowadays MUW. And after graduating from the W, she worked a year in Tupelo and Nashville. She was a guidance counselor at Milam Junior High. She married Frank Riley, a local attorney, and they have one son, Frank Riley Jr., who lives in Madison. She's an active member of First United Methodist Church. In fact, all of these are Methodists, so it's not very ecumenical. But in the community, she has enjoyed a number of civic involvements. Jane is a life member of the Tupelo Junior Auxiliary, and she served as charity ball chairman. And she's been on the board of Mississippi Methodist Senior Services and the Gumtree Art Museum, and she has done reviews for Luncheon with Brooks quite a few times, and she's always a great success. Our other reviewer is Jo Mark, and she's from Alabama. And she graduated from Russellville High School and the University of Alabama, and she has a BA degree in history, and she taught 30 years, and she's still sane, I think, after 30 years of teaching. And she taught mostly U.S. history, and she was the sponsor of several student organizations. She was married to the late Jess Mark, and together they raised 3 children. They have 3 wonderful grandsons and a 7-year-old granddaughter. And then Beverly McAllily is a native of Pontotoc, Mississippi, a graduate of Pontotoc High School and Millsaps College, and she received a degree in organ performance. And for a short while, she worked in Jackson, and then Greenville, and then finally she made it. Oh, you used to be an organist at the Presbyterian Church in Greenville. Yeah. Oh, okay. In 1982, she relocated to Nashville and got a master's in church music. And then after that, she came to Tupelo. And when I read your retirement, you were what? Pleasantly bossy? So anyway, something like that. But anyway. Yes, very bossy. Is she very bossy? But Beverly is one of Tupelo's most talented citizens and has been such an asset to our community. So we are so pleased that she is with us today. And anyway, she did retire after 45 years of church service. I cannot imagine dealing with divas that long. But anyway, she is married to Steve McAllily, and they enjoy spending family time with his 3 sons and with her sister, Melanie Clement. So anyway, our program today is Songs of America, and I'll let the ladies take over.
Well, when I spoke up a while ago and said 2 talented people, Beverly's very talented. Jo wrote the script. I'm here because I can read. So that's how this thing goes. John Meacham is very familiar to a lot of us. In fact, I can call him my friend because I work at Reed's Bookstore for book signings, and so I have become a friend with John Meacham. He's visited Tupelo twice, and one of these times he spoke at this very library downstairs, and Reed's helped with that, and I was here that night too. The 52-year-old Meacham was born in Chattanooga. He attended the University of the South at Swanee, Tennessee. He graduated summa cum laude in 1991 with a degree in English Lit. His first job was as a writer at the Chattanooga Times, and he followed that with stints at Newsweek magazine and the New York Times Book Review magazine. John has appeared regularly on MSNBC's Morning Joe and CBS's This Morning. Frequently, he also appears on the Today Show if a news story concerns political or historical topics, which is his area of expertise. He has authored or co-authored 12 books. In 2009, he published his groundbreaking work, American Lion, Andrew Jackson in the White House, which won the Pulitzer Prize for biography. His latest book is His Truth is Marching On, John Lewis and the Power of Hope. Meacham currently is working on a book about James and Dolly Madison. His reach is far and wide in universities and organizations across our nation and abroad. He taught at Sewanee, his alma mater, and he was a visiting professor of political science at Vanderbilt before being appointed to the Rogers Chair in American Presidency at Vanderbilt. He's got really fine credentials, you just have to admit. You may not know that last November, Meacham was formally installed as canon historian of the Washington National Cathedral, the first person to ever hold that position. As canon, he can preach or lead discussions several times a year on issues of faith, spirituality, and civic life. The Meachams live in Nashville, and he is married to Keith Meacham, who, interestingly enough, graduated from high school at St. Andrews Academy in Jackson, Mississippi, and also from the University of Virginia.
I'm not used to this, holding a microphone. Tim McGraw, age 54, is a very famous country music star. I'm sure you've heard of him. You may even have one of his records. He has sold 80 million albums worldwide, which is quite a number. He has won numerous Grammy Awards, Country Music Association Awards, People's Magazine's Awards, so we'll have to admit that he's a very talented man. He claims that his college roommate said that he played the guitar so poorly that they hid it from him. and so he didn't pay a whole lot of attention to them. He did quit school, quit college, and went to Nashville, and after a period of time, he became a great success. You may be aware that Tim McGraw is he was in The Blind Side. He's an actor also. And he's been on if you've watched the TV series Yellowstone, he's had a part in that. And then he and his wife, Faith McGraw, who is also a country music star in her own right, they are actors in the prequel, 1883. So you may want to watch them. And also I saw this morning on the Today Show that Tim McGraw is going to be on The Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon tonight. So if you want to tune in, do that. An interesting fact about Tim is that he is the son of Tug McGraw, who was a very fine relief pitcher for the New York Mets and the Philadelphia Phillies. And as I said, he's married to Faith Hill, and they have 3 daughters. You may be wondering how a wonderful historian and a country music star got together to write this book. Well, they're neighbors in Nashville. And Tim said that he stalked John Meacham to try to get an invitation to a dinner party. And finally he did. And afterwards they were sitting outside smoking cigars and talking about current events in history. And so Tim McGraw asked John if he had ever thought about the role that music plays in U.S. history. And John said, well, no. He said, I'm intrigued by the idea, but I have not. And so he said, it would open up a whole nother audience to people who might become interested in history. And music has a way of pulling in your emotions as well. So they decided early on that they would do a division of labor. John would write the history, and Tim then, in what they call sidebars, would give his perspective as a musician on the songs that were selected. Each chapter deals with a period of American history and ties in songs that are often in support or protest of a movement. Meacham says that the protest songs in particular make the book. It's fascinating to learn how music reflected conflict and tension and how it changed with the times. Music has a way of transporting you that prose doesn't, and Meacham said it's hard for him to admit that because he's a prose man. A song can galvanize people's way of thinking and give people a moral cause for action. The book stops in 2008. Meacham says that you have to wait a period of time before you can really give a proper perspective to a historical event. There were some statements that Meacham made that Jane and I thought were important statements that you need to keep in mind as we go through this book. Number one, throughout our history, lyrics and instrumentals have carried us through the dark days and enabled us to celebrate the bright ones. Number two, to gain a fuller understanding of the American story, one needs to explore the music of patriotism, which is also inevitably the music of protest. Patriotism celebrates and commemorates, protests, critiques, and corrects. The two are intertwined and are vital to each other. A true patriot salutes the flag, but always makes sure it's flying over a nation that's not only free but fair, not only strong but just. Oop, don't want to skip a page. And Meacham wrote, "Our mission now," and this is our mission. Jane and I share this mission, and Beverly certainly, to hear the music that has lifted us from danger, kept us together amid tragedy, united us anew in triumph, and urged us on toward justice. The music of a nation reminds us where we've been, who we are, and what we can become. And we've had to jump about in all of this. We couldn't cover it all. We are assuming that all of you remember your U.S. history from high school, and so you'll be able to fill in the gaps nicely as we jump ahead.
Some of my students are here and they know. Our book begins with the events leading up to the American Revolution. For years, many colonists were increasingly upset with British control, particularly because of taxation without representation. Colonists protested and protested and protested some more. 8 years before the war, John Dickinson of Pennsylvania wrote the Liberty Song, trying to persuade colonists to take a stand and to open their purses and give money. Tim McGraw points out that the song's strong rhythm is uplifting. As you listen, please see if you would become a patriot and give money to the cause of freedom.
Come join hand in hand, brave Americans all, and rouse your bold hearts at their liberty's call. No tyrannous act shall suppress your just claim, or stain with dishonor America's name. In freedom we're born, and in freedom we'll live. Our purses are ready, steady, friends, steady. Not as slaves, but as free men, our money will give.
Well, the colonists won their independence. Well, that's worse. Thank you, though. And later, the U.S. Constitution was written and ratified. But Meacham makes the point that that did not mean that this was the signal of the dawn of a heavenly kingdom on earth. A country created for liberty chose to subjugate women, enslave African Americans, and persecute Native Americans. Freedom of thought and expression allowed different points of view. That was the price of liberty. The American system was designed for conflict. Federalists and Republicans engaged in ferocious fighting. And on the international stage, we found ourselves in the Second War for Independence, called the War of 1812. The question was, could this young nation, not even 25 years old, survive a second war with the British? The music that we remember from this war, the War of 1812, is the Star-Spangled Banner. And the year, give you a little background here, the year was 1814. The British had already burned Washington, D.C., and were approaching Baltimore. And in the harbor of Baltimore was Fort McHenry. An American lawyer named Francis Scott Key went on board a British ship in the harbor to arrange for the release of an American prisoner. And while he was there, the battle started. The British flotilla had come close. They couldn't come in real close. But anyway, they started bombarding Fort McHenry. The battle lasted 25 hours. And so all during the night, he wondered if the fort had withstood the onslaught. The only way he could tell would be if the flag was still flying, and sure enough, it was. And so on the back of an envelope, he wrote the verses. Later, it was put to music, and eventually became our national anthem. The song is bold, warlike, and majestic, stirring the profoundest emotions of the soul. And sing along. You all know this one. Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's west gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets red glare, rebels bursting in air, gave through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave? Tim says when he sings the song, he feels the honor and the obligation of being an American. The song is hard to sing. You have to start really low to be able to get up to the high notes at the end. But he says, like America, it's worth the effort. Interestingly enough, it was not until 1931, when Herbert Hoover was president, that it became our national anthem. The land of the free was a term that did not apply to enslaved African Americans. The song of slaves were those of an unhappy people. Frederick Douglass, who had been a slave, managed to get away to Maryland, became a freedman, became an abolitionist, and he said that it never ceased to amaze him how people in the North thought that the song of slaves were songs of people who were happy and contented. He said it could not be any further from the truth. Douglass also spoke of what was called masking or double meaning, which is the tradition of singing about one thing while in fact singing about another. So one of the songs that was an important song for enslaved people was Swing Low, Sweet Chariot. And as we sing this, I want to see if you can figure out the double meaning or the masking.
Sing with me, swing low, sweet chariot, coming for to carry me home. Swing low, sweet chariot, coming for to carry me home. I looked over Jordan, and what did I see? Coming for to carry me home. A band of angels coming after me, coming for to carry me home. Swing low, sweet chariot, coming for to carry me home. Swing low, sweet chariot, coming for to carry me home.
Did you hear the double meaning? The sweet chariot is the Underground Railroad. The angels coming to carry them home were conductors on the Underground Railroad, like Harriet Tubman. Taking them home was to the north. So there's a double meaning in that song.
The fiery trial of the Civil War would decide if America would remain the land of the of the slave, or would it really become the land of the free? Although music was certainly important in both Northern and Southern culture before the Civil War, it became even more prominent during the war. More than mere entertainment, it provided a valuable way for Americans to express their thoughts and feelings about the conflict. The music of the Union fired the imagination with images of righteous struggle. There could be no higher calling, no more divine mission than the abolition of slavery. The song, The Battle Cry of Freedom, is a good example of this inspirational music. As you listen, think about whether you would have been inspired to join this righteous cause.
Yes, we'll rally round the flag, boys, we'll rally round the flag, shouting the battle cry of freedom. We will rally from the hillside, we'll gather from the plain, shouting the battle cry of freedom. The Union forever, hurrah, boys, hurrah, down with the traitor, up with the star, while we'll rally round the flag, boys, we'll rally once again, shouting the battle cry of freedom. The Union forever, hurrah, boys, hurrah, down with the traitor, up with the star, while we rally round the flag, boys, we'll rally once again, shouting the battle cry of freedom.
In opposition to the Union was the Confederate States of America, whose essential anthem was, I wish I was in Dixieland. Many today do not know that the song was composed by a white man and sung by whites who were pretending to be blacks, who was supposed to be pining nostalgically for the South, suggesting that the land of cotton was preferable to the free North. The tune was familiar and catchy. Even Abraham Lincoln said it was one of his favorite tunes. The Southern anthem gave the Confederacy a common sense of identity. Tim McGraw says that the song is challenging to dissect. For a lot of white Southerners, the song evokes warm memories of home. For a lot of African Americans, it's one more tragic reminder of the horrors of slavery and the all too persistent realities of racism.
Sing with me. I wish I was in the land of cotton. Old times there are not forgotten. Look away, look away, look away, Dixieland. In Dixie's land where I was born in early onward frosty morning. Look away, look away, look away, Dixieland. Then I wish I was in Dixie. Hooray, hooray. In Dixieland I'll take my stand to live and die in Dixie. Away, away, away down south in Dixie. Away, away, away down south in Dixie.
Now we move into the early 20th century. America was becoming more urban, more diverse, and more engaged on the world stage. There was fierce reaction to rising immigration. At that time, it was against the Chinese and the Irish. Agitation for women's suffrage, persistent pleas to end Jim Crow, and a foreign war. In the autumn of 1915, 25,000 marchers walked up Fifth Avenue in New York with 250,000 people watching. 30 bands played marching tunes. Guess who was marching? 25,000 women. Women were marching. This was a protest for women's suffrage, and yet it would be 5 more years before women would get the right to vote. Let's go back a few years. Women had worked very hard during the abolitionist movement to end slavery. thinking that once the war was over, everybody, men and women of both races, would have the right to vote. Well, that didn't happen. So suffragettes like Susan B. Anthony and others dared to vote, were arrested, and tried, and Susan B. Anthony died without ever having the right to vote. She did vote illegally once, and she got into trouble for that. She had a lot of spunk. Women continued to protest, and then in 1920, with the 19th Amendment, women got the right to vote. Interestingly enough, it was not until 1984 that the Mississippi legislature decided to ratify the amendment. The 19th Amendment. Okay, we don't have a song for this one. I'm of the opinion that if women had had a more catchy song, we might have gotten the votes then. But anyway, we're going to move on. Okay, that's right. Okay, after Appomattox, the issue was no longer slavery, but white dominance. Jim Crow became the way in the South. To fight for a rightful portion of the American promise for African Americans, the NAACP, with leaders like W.B. Du Bois and the American Liberties Union, were founded. It's also not a coincidence that we see the revival of the Ku Klux Klan. It was during this period of time that a song was written that became the official hymn for the NAACP. The song was Lift Every Voice, and James Weldon Johnson and his brother wrote this in 1900 for a commemoration of Abraham Lincoln's birthday. Within 20 years, it was sung widely in the South, and today it's sung widely across the nation. African Americans consider it their anthem, but Johnson emphasized that there's no conflict with the Star-Spangled Banner. It's equally patriotic. Tim McGraw makes the point that unlike the pain of so many spirituals and hymns, this song is one of pride. The lyrics acknowledge the past, but sketch a hopeful picture of the future.
Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring, ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise high as the listening skies. Let it resound loud as the rolling sea. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Facing the rising sun of a new day begun, let us march on till victory is won.
In 1917, the United States found ourselves in a war again. This was called the Great War, World War I. We entered the war to make the world safe for democracy. You remember the war. U-boats, unrestricted submarine warfare, Lusitania, trench warfare, poison gas. U.S. soldiers, not knowing how horrible the war was going to be, couldn't wait to get in the war, and they didn't want to miss the action. As in all wars, it's important to unify, to unify the people at home as well as those who would be sent to fight. George M. Cohan was a composer and a performer, and he played an important role in the war effort. His goal was to bring a divided country together as we fought with our allies to defeat the Central Powers. After reading the headlines that Congress had declared war, he called his family together, and he got a big pot out of the kitchen and put it on his head, and got a broomstick and put it against his shoulder and started marching and came up with the song Over There.
Sing with me.
Over there,
Over there, sing the word, over there, that the Yanks are coming, the Yanks are coming, the drums rum-tumming everywhere, so prepare, say a prayer. a word to beware. We'll be over, we're coming over, and we won't come back till it's over there.
In recognition of Cohan's old war songs that brought the country together during the World War I, FDR presented Cohan with the Congressional Gold Medal. Congress had signaled out over there, in particular for its patriotism. And Tim McGraw comments that music is often one of the few tools that can remind soldiers, as well as citizens back home, why they're over there risking everything.
By 1932, the Great Depression had consumed the United States, and the nation was at risk of a violent break from democratic capitalism. FDR campaigned on the pledge for a new deal for the American people. A large part of dealing with such dire conditions was to present a positive attitude. To reflect this attitude and to persuade Americans that FDR could make a difference, his campaign song was, "Happy Days Are Here Again."
Here we go. Ready? Ready, singing. Happy days are here again. The skies above are clear again. Let us sing a song of cheer again. Happy days are here again. All together shout it now. There's no one here who can doubt it now. So let's tell the world about it now. Happy days are here again. Your cares and troubles are gone. There'll be no more from now on. Happy days are here again. The skies above are clear again. Let us sing a song of cheer again. Happy days are here again.
After his election, FDR said, "Let me assert my firm belief that the only thing we have to fear is fear itself." But Roosevelt's show of confidence required immense effort, for no one, including the president, truly knew if things would get better, and in spite of numerous New Deal measures, it took a long time for recovery to occur. One person whose family did not find happy days during the Depression was Woody Guthrie, a great American songwriter. Hardships of life in the Dust Bowl of Oklahoma caused Guthrie to move to California in hopes of finding a better life. Many of his songs contain a message, as does "This Land Was Made for You and Me." It is really an example of the American debate about the country's promise and the reality.
This land is your land, this land is my land, from California to the New York Islands, from the Redwood Forest to the Gulf Stream waters. This land was made for you and me. As I was walking that ribbon of highway, I saw above me that endless skyway. I saw below me that golden valley. This land was made for you and me. This land is your land, this land is my land. From California to the New York Islands, from the Redwood Forest to the Gulf Stream waters. This land was made for you and me.
Interestingly enough, Guthrie wrote a verse which is not usually sung when this song is presented. And this is the verse. "In the shadow of the steeple, I saw my people. By the relief office, I saw my people. As they stood there hungry, I stood there asking, is this land made for you and me?" As the U.S. continued to battle the Depression at home, a war was raging in Europe. nations were being overrun by Hitler and the other Axis powers. Americans had no interest in getting involved in another war, but the British badly needed U.S. support. During one of several meetings between Churchill and Roosevelt, and this one happened aboard a British ship, Churchill chose some songs, some grand hymns for the president and the prime ministers and the sailors aboard the ship to sing. Do you remember that Meacham said that a song can give people a moral cause for action? Let me say that again. A song can give people a moral cause for action. What do you think Churchill was trying to accomplish by singing "Onward, Christian Soldiers"? Onward, Christian soldiers,
marching as to war, with the cross of Jesus going on before. Christ our royal master leads against the foe, forward into battle, see his banners go. Onward, Christian soldiers, marching as to war, with the cross of Jesus going on before.
Now we get to the decade of the 60s, which brought discontent, desperation, and terror. Khrushchev and the Cuban Missile Crisis. Alabama Governor George Wallace blocked a black student from enrolling at the University of Alabama. That was 2 years before I went there. Medgar Evers was assassinated, and 4 little girls were killed in the bombing of a black Baptist church in Birmingham. The March on Washington, freedom rides, sit-ins, the assassination of President Kennedy. Let's think about the role of music in the civil rights movement. It was powered by song. As Martin Luther King said, the songs give the people new courage and a sense of unity. As much hymn as ballad, "We Shall Overcome" has a kind of stateliness and a certain dignity. John Lewis said it made us feel like we could face almost anything. Tim points out that it has the power to move people. Its brilliance lies in its capacity for many different voices to join in, a fitting metaphor if there ever was one.
We shall overcome. We shall overcome. We shall overcome someday. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe we shall overcome someday.
A major event in the civil rights struggle took place in August of 1963 in Washington, D.C. Called the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom. There were 14 performers whose songs were a major part of the event, including Joan Baez, who sang "We Shall Overcome," Bob Dylan, Mahalia Jackson, the Freedom Singers, and Peter, Paul, and Mary. Peter, Paul, and Mary sang "If I Had a Hammer," and then they sang Bob Dylan's "Blowing in the Wind," which they had recorded and which had already become a huge hit. As we sing this song, think about what Tim said about it, that maybe the answer, which is blowing, is a huge piece of the masterpiece of the song, the ambiguity. It's up to us to figure out what it all means. Some of those powerful songs let you fill in the gaps, challenging the listener to think and reflect.
How many roads must a man walk down before you call him a man? Yes, and how many seas must a white dove sail before he sleeps in the sand? Yes, and how many times must the cannonballs fly before they're forever banned? The answer, my friend, is blowing in the wind. The answer is blowing in the wind.
Hang on to your hats. Our next era is called the Archie Bunker versus the Age of Aquarius. Do you get the picture? A time of much tension in our nation. Watergate and calls for Nixon's impeachment. Vietnam seemingly a war we couldn't win. The counterculture. Woodstock. The hippies. The silent majority. Yes, this was a very tense time, and we can hear the sounds of that tension in the music of the era. The song, Okie from Muskogee, written by Merle Haggard, a songwriter, singer, and country music star, had no patience with the long-haired young, the counterculture who protested the war in Vietnam. He thought they were unqualified to judge America, as did many Americans who resented their views on life, their filth, and their visible self-disrespect. Haggard wrote Okie from Muskogee, which appealed to the silent majority. The song would go on to win Single of the Year from the Country Music Association. Can you believe that? As Beverly sings it, and you can join in if you want to. Listen to the contrast and the tension.
We don't smoke marijuana in Muskogee, and we don't take our trips on LSD, and we don't burn our draft cards down on Main Street, but we like living right and being free. And I'm proud to be an Okie from Muskogee, a place where even squares can have a ball. We still wave our glory down at the courthouse. White lightning's still the biggest thrill of all.
On the other side of the spectrum was the Age of Aquarius, Let the Sunshine In, a medley from the musical Hair. It was a big hit for the Fifth Dimension. This song came to define the end of the 60s and the hippie movement.
When the moon is in the seventh house and Jupiter aligns with Mars, then peace will guide the planets and love will steer the stars. This is the dawning of the age of Aquarius, the age of Aquarius, Aquarius, Aquarius. Harmony and understanding, sympathy and trust abounding. No more falsehoods or derisions, golden living dreams of vision, mystic crystal revelation, and the mind's true liberation. Aquarius, Aquarius.
Are these songs of protest? To Tim McGraw, they are songs of change. Much of the music of the era was a reaction to the Vietnam War, usually songs of protest against the war. But some of it was from the perspective of U.S. troops in Vietnam who were far from home and afraid that they were going to die. Glenn Campbell's Galveston is a good example of this.
Galveston, oh Galveston, I still hear your sea winds blowing. I will see her dark eyes glowing. She was 21 when I left Galveston. Galveston, oh Galveston, I still hear your sea waves crashing while I watch the cannon flashing. I clean my gun and dream of Galveston. I still see her standing by the water, standing there looking out to the sea. And is she waiting there for me on the beach where we used to run? Galveston, oh Galveston, I am so afraid of dying before I dry the tears she's crying, before I see your seabirds flying in the sun at Galveston, at Galveston.
It has been said that music doesn't create movements, but if a movement exists, music can power and drive that movement. And that was certainly true of the anti-war movements. And now to something really familiar. Of course, there was our own Elvis Presley, Leonard Bernstein called Elvis the greatest cultural force in the 20th century. Let me digress just a second to tell you, and Donna Kay knows this really well too, Elvis Presley and I were in junior high school together at Milam School. He was in the 6th grade in Miss Quay Camp's room, and I was in the 5th grade across the hall in Miss Catherine Rogers' room. And there we were, Elvis and old Jane. Leonard Bernstein called Elvis the greatest cultural force in the 20th century. He introduced the beat to everything, and he changed everything. Music, language, clothes. It was a whole new social revolution. There are many other very successful musicians during this time whose songs were emblematic of a changing country, but we will leave those for another day.
As the 70s ended, the U.S. was suffering from spiking inflation and soaring interest rates. The Soviets invaded Afghanistan, and Islamic militants took over or took hostages, U.S. hostages in Iran. Enter Ronald Reagan in 1981, a very popular president who made the world very different. Remember Gorbachev, tear down that wall? His personal gifts were enormous. He could make the average American feel better about their disappointments, their anxieties, the things that they were disillusioned about. His success tells us that optimism, as opposed to pessimism, are presidential values. He opened his arms and he smiled. The song most associated with Reagan's vision can be seen in Lee Greenwood's God Bless America. It became, when Reagan ran for re-election, it became his anthem, his theme song. The song is one that resonates with liberals as well as conservatives, Democrats as well as Republicans.
If tomorrow all the things were gone I'd work for all my life, and I had to start again with just my children and my wife, I'd thank my lucky stars to be living here today, 'cause the flag still stands for freedom and they can't take that away. And I'm proud to be an American where at least I know I'm free, and I won't forget the man who died who gave that right to me, and I'd gladly stand up next to you and defend her till today, 'cause there ain't no doubt I love this land. God bless the USA.
Just because Reagan's presidency made many Americans feel good about the U.S. aid didn't mean that everybody did. Bruce Springsteen, a popular musician of the era, pointed out some ugly truths about how the country doesn't work for everybody, particularly veterans at that time. Some Americans who didn't necessarily feel that the country worked for them were black Americans. A new kind of music came on the scene during this time called hip-hop, which spoke to racial divides in this country. By rapping about and telling their story of ghettos and slums, black rappers were restoring the humanity of black culture. It is certainly evident that the power of hip-hop has shaped each post-Reagan generation. Urgent and energetic rap music is protest itself. So now we're going to make a big jump to September the 9th. September 11th, 2001. On Friday, after the attacks on Tuesday, a memorial service was held at the National Cathedral for the victims of the 9/11 attacks. The music of the day reflected the complex emotions. It struck a balance between inspirational religious music like "Oh God, Our Help in Ages Past" and patriotic songs like "America the Beautiful." And that was precisely the point, to really stir the emotions of the American people, as it has traditionally done in times of national crisis or war. President Bush spoke of a peaceful nation, but one that is fierce when stirred to anger. Grief must lead to determination. At the end of the service, the congregation sang the battle hymn of the Republic. And one of Bush's advisors said, "Do we really want to do that? Some churches have removed this hymn from their hymnals because it seems to be very bellicose, very warlike. And maybe we shouldn't sing it." And President Bush said, "No, defiance is good," and so the hymn was sung. It was actually written during the Civil War by Julia Ward Howe. We decided to use it here instead of during the Civil War songs. She was a poet and an activist, and she watched Union soldiers prepare for battle, and she was so moved for the song by what she saw, that she decided to write this. The song became popular and elevated the fight for the Union to a noble cause. The power of the song is the vision of the armies of the Lord on the march.
Mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord. He is trampling out the vintage where the grapes of wrath are stored. He hath loosed the faithful lightning of his terrible swift sword. His truth is marching on. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. His truth is marching on.
Tim says the power of the song is how it links the human and the divine. Pilgrims on earth taking on the Lord's work. Throughout history, ministers of the Lord have led us to higher ground. That's when, as a nation, we make our greatest advances.
Given the current state of the nation, Meacham asked, can music play any role in smoothing out the sharp edges of our disagreements and easing the tensions of tribalism? Meacham says that history suggests that it can. Music is neither a narcotic nor a panacea, but music can recast the most charged and complicated issues in ways that may lead to actual conversation rather than reflexive confrontation. America is about debate, dissent, and disputes. We're always arguing, always fighting, always restless, and our music is a mirror and a maker of that once and future truth. The whole panoply of America can be traced, and more important, heard and felt in the songs that echo throughout public squares. And if we can hear and feel how other guys hear and feel, we're better equipped to press on toward a more perfect union. The song of America is not finished. The last notes have not yet been played. In that spirit, in that cause, now and always, let's lift every voice and sing.
Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring, ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise high as the listening skies. Let it resound loud as the rolling sea.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And thank you all for coming, and we will gather again together soon. Just wonderful.